June 2nd, Montpelier Development Review Board meeting. To start us out here, I just almost called you Cassandra. That's so funny. Meredith will be going over the remote protocol.
Okay. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. And this is the shared screen part is more for people watching via ORCA Media, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in my spiel that applies for anyone who is on remotely. All right. So for anyone viewing tonight's meeting via ORCA Media, you can participate in the Development Review Board discussion via the Zoom platform through either video or telephone access options. For the full video experience, you can type this link into your web browser. Alternatively, you can dial in from any phone using this phone number, and when prompted, put in this meeting ID. Under either of those options, I will get a prompt that you want to get into the meeting, and I'll be able to let you in. If someone is trying to access the meeting and having problems, please email me at mcrandall@montpelier-vt.org. For those attending via Zoom, turning your video on is optional. And actually, if you're having problems with the audio, the quickest way often to fix that is actually to turn your camera off. So you'll still be able to see us, but your computer isn't trying to upload a live video of you to us. For everyone attending, please keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. This will help reduce background noise. And if you wish to speak, please make sure to raise your hand, and the chair will call on you. I may need to unmute you depending on how everything goes, but so far I know everybody who is on the meeting. So we don't have to go into our high security protocols. Please reserve the chat function for troubleshooting or logistics questions only. Questions or comments about items on the agenda should be done orally by raising your hand and waiting to be called on. If the chair calls on you for a comment, please make sure to provide your full name and address for the record. I'm sorry, had to admit somebody. And that way our minute secretary can get everything into the record. And if it's about an application that's actually being decided on this evening, that also lets me mail you a copy of that decision. In the event the public is unable to access tonight's meeting, it will need to be continued to a time and place certain. I'll now hand the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you. I wanted to put the approval of the agenda out there with one change. At the bottom of the agenda, it says the next meeting is June 2nd, and it's actually the 16th. That being said, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Looks like we have a lot of interested people tonight, which I think is super. Let's just all remember my two favorite things are brevity and civility. So as long as we can hang with those two, I'm going to be good. The first applicant is Amanda Reed and John Kim. Would you guys like to come up and sit up here? It's you. Okay. Okay. Meredith, do you want to just give us a super quick overview?
Yeah. So this is a sketch plan subdivision application for a 2-parcel subdivision. As board knows, subdivisions all have to come to the board, and at sketch plan, no actual decisions are being made, but this is an opportunity for the board to ask questions, raise any issues that they might see that need to be addressed before the final application. And it also gives the public an opportunity to review the application and submit their comments as well, if they have any, so that when it comes time for the final application, the applicant can put together as complete a package as possible.
Would you introduce, let's go around and have the board introduce themselves first.
Rob Goodwin, Vice Chair.
Meredith Crandall, staff.
Sharon Allen, Chair.
Catherine Burgess, member.
Joe Kiernan, board member.
Ryan Jones, board member.
Alex Hollis, board member.
And on that introductory note, maybe our applicant could introduce himself.
I'm George McCain with McCain Consulting on behalf of the applicants.
Okay. Great. Meredith, can you put up a map?
Yeah. It's kind of busy.
So that is one of the maps in the application.
Yep, it is the
Yes.
map in the app. Oh, you wanted me to do a different map?
No,
Okay.
Fine.
So just for orientation purposes, and this is especially for people in the audience, let me zoom in a second, but also then switch this to drag. Here's the north arrow. So this is north. This is the city boundary up here, actually. And this line here is Gould Hill Road. And the current parcel goes from here, from the city boundary, all the way down to here to this line. And this eastern boundary here is formed by a stream. And here is the proposed new boundary line that would be created to create this parcel and this parcel, just
I
an
know.
orientation.
I noticed that, what we'll do first is get information from the applicant, and then we'll, go through board questions, and then we'll recognize the public to do.
This is a question about that. I think you were moving the cursor. It was impossible to see it. I'm here for this.
Oh, okay, so. George, do you want me to do this or do you want to do it?
Up to you, whatever.
Well,
Go ahead, feel free.
Oh, we can,
The parcel goes from here to there. I was just trying to orient people since you have the map.
Where, can you say where?
Parcel here to here.
Oh, okay.
It's the whole thing.
Okay, great.
Here's the property, here's the boundary line with, here's the town line. So this is right, and here's Gould Hill Road.
you make an amazing cursor.
It's hard because if we turn the lights off here, nobody can see the paper that they have.
Right.
We don't have an option of just turning off a couple lights.
And could you show us where the subdivision?
So let's get the applicant in here. Are you able to react to this map up here?
Yep, yeah, so that is an overview of the existing parcel. It was previously subdivided a number of years ago, but it is currently undeveloped. There was a wastewater permit for a single family home on the overall property of 11 acres, which is right there.
Okay.
So that had been previously permitted, but has not been acted upon yet.
Okay.
So it's currently undeveloped, and we're proposing to subdivide that existing lot into a smaller lot that we're calling lot B2 of 2.5 acres, which is on the south side.
That's this one.
That is the left of the screen. And then proposed lot B1, which would be the larger 9-acre remainder of land to the north or the right side of that picture.
I noticed that the address was 0 Gould Hill Road. Is that correct?
Yes, I think since there's no structure, I'm not aware of an E911 address yet.
Okay, so
So
my question was that to the left of this, of your property line there,
Mhm.
is that adjacent immediately to Elm Street?
no, that's quite a
Okay.
ways from Elm Street.
Okay, I just wondered with that address, I was like, sorry, you accurate base?
Yeah, no, it's unassigned because there's no
Okay.
structure yet. So
So
I
if
think
you-
it's across the street from the 1200s, but I don't recall off the top of my head without looking at a map.
Or just driveway positions and things like that. So yeah, if you want to just take a quick spin through what is their planning. So this application, I want to remember to remind both board members and the public that this is only about the subdivision. This is not. And what we need to consider with the subdivision is whether the lots are developable. Not, we don't need to decide what can go on them, what cannot go on them. They just have to be developable in some portion. So we are really only here about the lot lines. Let's see.
Understood. So our proposed use for the new lot is for residential use. So I believe we're meeting the district standards with regards to lot acreage, lot size, setbacks. There are some steep slopes on the site, so we did prepare a preliminary erosion control plan to show that there is a way to develop the property that we believe would be in conformance with the regulations. We found a suitable water and wastewater system location for on-site wastewater in a mound style leach field, and then a site for an on-site drilled well. And there are also some stream setbacks. So there's the 50-foot stream setback and then the 25-foot riparian buffer. So those both show up on actually a different plan that's more of a site plan than the overall subdivision review of the whole property. But we believe that with those details, we've provided enough information to show that the lot we're creating would be suitable for residential use.
Great. Before. Did you have a question, Rob?
Yeah, sure.
Looks like lot two, B2. First of all, you said it's already been subdivided once. Where's the parcel that was initially carved off, or is that like a,
That is to the east of the stream, and I believe it was conveyed to the city.
oh, I got you. Okay. And then, does the same owner own lands in East Montpelier also, or, does it just stop at the line?
I don't believe so. John is here as well. John, it's right at the line, correct?
Oh,
Yeah, just come up to a microphone.
identify yourself and
Hi, John Kim, live at 23 Harrison Avenue in Montpelier. And I'm the applicant along with my wife, Amanda Reed. And we do not have additional land. The land stops at the town line.
great, thank you.
Okay, so I don't know, I think worthy of some discussion, because I know we'll get there. Kind of have the driveway sketched in. Obviously the driveway is not necessarily part of this, but it does go through, I'm guessing, maybe a class 3 wetland that you have
Correct.
mapped.
Yeah.
Let me just explain a little bit how you maybe want to plan on addressing that.
Yep, so we have, it does go through a class 3 wetland. There is an existing logging road that comes down off of Gold Hill Road. So that's really the curb cut where we have it shown there is the most reasonable access point, given the steep bank that comes off of Gold Hill Road. So we've situated that driveway to minimize impacts to the class 3 wetland, keeping it as far to the south as possible while still maintaining space for the proposed wastewater system. And we'll be limiting that to less than the regulated level of disturbance through the Army Corps of Engineers for the class 3 wetland. There is no state jurisdiction on that. But there is an Army Corps federal regulation, so you can have up to 5,000 square feet of disturbance there, and we're gonna minimize that to the maximum extent feasible, well below that 5,000 square feet number.
Just to, I'm a little embarrassed to ride my bike up Gould Hole enough. I don't have a place exactly where this is, but there's the vast trail. There's like a logging road further down. That's not the same logging road.
I don't believe so. This didn't look like it had vast trail.
Okay.
But there were a lot of
It's like-
overgrown willows and some other stuff
Gotcha.
through there, so it
Okay,
didn't
I'm
get
thinking
any
of a
kind of
different
regular
spot.
traffic.
I don't know where this is now. Yep. That's all I have for now.
Alex?
I have a comment, I think, in relation to Rob's question, and that is that I noticed that the septic or whatever the permit for the permitted structure that already has whatever permits it needed, and you submitted a letter from the state about those permits, referred to a 69-acre parcel. And trying to figure out right about that,
I believe so.
so that
I don't
everything on
think-
the other side of the stream.
Meredith?
So it was actually conveyed to the city.
Huh.
The other parcel, on the other side of the stream is conveyed to the city. And so, I mean, but the working out, I believe, but this is something that has to be answered for the final application. I wasn't able to go back and find it. That when they did that conveyance, they got paperwork from the state about whether or not that was going to impact the prior wastewater permit for that already. That was part of the boundary line adjustment review, because there's a boundary line adjustment because it got merged with already owned
Right.
city land. So I think I noted that in here, that the final application needs to confirm that
Okay.
the reduced amount of land
Still
is
sufficient.
still
So
sufficient
it's all,
for that other wastewater.
oh, that's all
permit.
regular with the evidence that's been brought in.
And there are several exemptions for boundary line adjustments when we look at water and wastewater permitting. And one of them is that the land being transferred between the two parties does not make the most sense for a wastewater system for the structure that's previously been permitted. So because you'd have to cross that stream to get to a wastewater system on the other side to serve a house on the west side of the stream. We can typically get the state regulators to sign off and agree that, yes, you're losing some bunch of acreage, but this doesn't have a meaningful impact on the permitted systems, and therefore you don't need to get an update. So
Got it.
hopefully one of those exists, but we'll be sure to address that in the final plat.
My applications got blended here today. Were there other questions from other board members? Joe?
I just have some questions about lot B1. You have a good amount of information on B2 in here. Are the same steep slopes present on B1 that are present on B2 or wetlands or anything like that?
We did not look at the entirety of B1, but in the area where the previously approved house on the wastewater side was proposed, there were no other wetlands other than this one that kind of spans both sides of the property line.
Okay.
In general, it's a bit of a gentler area. There is a steep ravine right when you get off of Gold Hill Road that will need a culvert crossing and some disturbances to go through there. But the house site and wastewater system location are relatively gentle.
Okay.
And we could provide a similar slope analysis to like the one that we proposed for B2, if that's something that you guys would need or request for the final plat review, or if you think it would be helpful.
So, I guess I just have a question for you that, with the other permit on that hasn't been acted on so far,
Mhm.
on the other side, when does that, is it expire? Is it new? Is it?
I can't recall off the top of my head when it was issued, but they do not expire from a water wastewater standpoint. So
Okay.
once your permit is in place, those are good in perpetuity.
Okay.
And then on this larger plat, the larger map that we have here, is that this is the proposed house location? There's another structure on it? Is that a garage or something or? Or is
Yes,
that
I
the-
believe the old plan had a house on a garage site on it in the prior WW permit, so we just kind of recreated the location
Okay.
from that permitted plan. It was by a different design firm than ourselves,
Yeah.
but it was a house and then a outbuilding or garage off to the side.
And then that's the wastewater system up to the,
To the
Right,
right,
yeah.
correct.
and was there a backup location too that's not shown here?
There was not, there was a change in the state regulations 10, 15 years ago, and when you have a mound system, you no longer need a replacement area.
Okay,
So if you've got a mound style leach field, you'll only have the one primary area shown.
all right, thank you.
No problem.
But just uphill of the mound system on B1, is that like a stone line ditch or there seems like a rectangle thing there that's coming off the road? Yeah, right where the cursor is right now.
Well, those are the setbacks. So that's the 20-foot road
No, it's like
setback. Or 20
Perpendicular to the
That's-
slope, kind of.
Yeah, that kind of the long dashed line.
Is that
that's-
just like attached text from the copyright of the aerial?
Oh, that right there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I was the other way.
No,
Yeah.
got it.
Yep. Google has wonderful imagery, but they like to get their plugs in. So
I see it.
Are there other questions, from the board or concerns, issues?
I have one other question. Given the large, long parcel here, do you, like, how did you settle on the site for B2 versus the other side or somewhere else?
it had to do with the fact that there was that existing logging road access that goes through there. And
Okay.
as it is kind of set down from the road, but as you get down into the lower plateau area, there is kind of a nice flat plateau area. It would be a relatively simple driveway to put in. And then kind of a nice spot for a house, even though you'd be limited with some of the clearing and other things you could do for the stream buffer. It does kind of hide itself well and blend in naturally to the surrounding area and the character of the neighborhood, and has relatively easy access because there is a steep bank that runs all the way along Gold Hill there on the east side. So
Okay. And were other sites considered, or was this kind of always the idea to? turn
this
that
has always been the
area?
idea. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Right.
thanks.
Just have a quick question about the.
Brian, your voice is a little soft.
Hi, I just had a quick question about the format, the presentation. I realized that Joe's question was just geared towards what was happening on lot B1. On lot B2, I think I found the road and two proposed structures. That road is not shaded in the same way. I was just having a hard time pulling it out.
Well, yeah, it's pretty clear. It's the road through here. There's like a parking area,
Yeah.
possible outbuilding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it does appear that when I created the PDF, that shading didn't
Okay.
print out in the
yeah.
same way for the permitted versus the proposed.
Okay, and then we are focusing on B2, but also the potential for some home and accessory building on B1 as well.
Correct, yeah, there was
Yeah,
one that was
okay.
permitted in the water and wastewater program, but it hasn't, there have been no development applications to actually construct it.
Okay.
But we wanted to preserve that location with the subdivision because it's already been located for a water and wastewater system approved for a drilled well.
Yeah.
So we wanted to also try to preserve that existing site, even though it would still need to come through for a zoning permit at the town level to be constructed. It has half the work done with the water and wastewater and
Yeah.
those
Okay,
other
yeah, I
parameters.
just want to make sure I knew what I was looking at. So,
Yep.
Thanks.
So, you got a copy of the staff notes, I presume,
Yes,
and maybe to put it well, that a lot of these are just really directed for you at what needs to be included
Mhm.
on the, so we could review those, but I feel like they're there, and if you have that information, that's sufficient. Just what's going to be on the final plat, where the lines are, what's going to be showing.
Yep.
So is this where there was, nope, that's the other one. And, so this is one of those ones where all the utilities should be located underground. Which always just kind of drives me a little crazy. In the neighborhood, it is above ground at this juncture.
You're gonna have to ask you know how normally I include a nice little picture?
Yeah.
I didn't have time to drive up there, and Google Maps Street View doesn't go that far up Gold Hill Road. So I presume that the utility lines run
overhead.
along the road up there, but I don't know for sure, and I haven't like.
John,
taken
could you maybe
pictures.
answer that question?
Yes, this is John. Yeah, the power lines run along the road.
On poles, they're not underground.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One thing, unless you put in there that we have done before, with these kind of applications is that we leave the whole landscaping issue up to, if it's a two lot subdivision, then we tend not to mess around with that. So, thoughts, Joe?
I
Different?
just wanted to let you know something, and maybe everyone else here. Bing Maps has better street view than Google Maps, and
Oh.
Bing Maps does have street view all the way up Gould Road, including some of the adjacent roads. So
Now.
Thank you.
I found that very hard to believe when it was told to me, but it is true.
That's great. Generally.
That's funny.
Thank you, Joe.
It's totally fine. One of the things we'll have to consider as we look at this next time is whether, any proposed subdivision, we can look at the proposed subdivision if it's in the character of the neighborhood. And I think that, I certainly think that seems like it lines up with the character of the neighborhood. Those are pretty big lots. It's not like somebody's just plunking some houses down. So I don't have any problems with that there. Were there any comments from the audience? Did you have any further questions? John? George.
oh,
Sorry.
well, there's an audience, so I was waiting.
Yeah. And I
Nope,
don't
I-
see any hands remotely.
Yeah, I don't. So I think Berkeley there,
No, I think the staff report does it pretty well. It would be good to know how detailed we would need a landscaping plan if that was something that, if you haven't. really needed too
I
much
don't believe
detail
we've consistently, twice, we've had, two subdivisions that were just two single lots. And I think our impulse is to leave that to the neighbors to work out among themselves when it's just two lots.
Yep. Perfect. And I think that was the big one for me looking through the staff report here. Make sure I didn't star anything else. No, I think my questions have been answered.
Okay, that's great. There are no further questions. I think you're, oh, one more. All right, come on, Rob.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just think as a comment, I think the steep slopes, you can engineer around that, make that work. There's certainly a process. With the stream and the wetlands, there are definitely some pretty significant constraints there. And not to say that, got a plan. I think it could work. I guess, did your wetlands analysis, or do you plan to make sure that it extends all to lots B1 and B2, or were you just focusing on, B2 at this point?
Meredith, did you have a comment?
Can I butt in, George, please?
Absolutely.
So, and I'm going to share my screen on this. If you give me just 1 second, once I get all my layers up. Where's my wetland layer? Oh, yep. It's not actually. So the city of Montpelier does not regulate all of the same wetlands that the state does. And so wetlands are these items in green. Vernal pools have these big 500-foot setbacks. Special protected natural communities are in orange. Here's the parcel in question. Montpelier doesn't regulate any of the wetlands on that parcel. We regulate the setbacks from the stream. And so because of that, and because this teeny tiny corner of a protected natural community is on this little bit of this corner of the parcel, the subdivision application is being discussed either I think this week or next week by the Montpelier Conservation Commission.
Okay.
But we don't look at those other wetlands. At this point, we leave that to state permit, and both the wastewater and then any other wetlands protections that are triggered at the state level. So you can look at it, I think, in terms of under the subdivision chapter, and the developability of the land to a degree, but the specifics of wetlands stuff, we don't. I'm just making sure that you draw that distinction about where the jurisdiction is. That's all.
Absolutely. And I think that's an excellent, distinction. And I think the concern is that, there is an existing wastewater or B1 existing way, but if you went and got a delineation and that ends up in the middle of, a wetland, that doesn't necessarily make.
No, we did look at the area that had previously been proposed for development on lot B1, which is why we closed that wetland loop that's right under the new property line.
Yeah.
We didn't do the entire 9
Right.
acres because there's nothing being proposed or contemplated over there. So in the area in question we've looked at, but not the full parcel.
Well, that makes sense.
And obviously, if they were going to move that structure, that location, and we need to find a new wastewater system or have an expanded delineation performed.
Right.
Prior to construction and prior to coming in for a zoning permit.
Yep. No, it's helpful information. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate all your time.
Mhm.
So there won't be any like written decision or anything out of tonight. The only thing in writing, is the minutes.
Okay.
And those should be posted by the end of the week. I can send you copies of them. But the staff report is really sort of your best outline on what to get started on for the final application. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions along the way.
Well, the only question I guess I would have, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but is there a timeline for an expiration of the sketch plan?
180 days.
180 days. That is not going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank you,
so
guys.
much.
Or actually, yeah, I think it's 180. Email me to remind me to double check.
Will
That
do.
might be the final plat recording
Certainly.
after the decision. Yeah, that might be the Mylar time. You might actually have a full year.
Wonderful.
To come back for final.
Confirm.
I think it's a full year.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys. Okay, moving along to the next item. 9 Heaton Street. Would the applicant or applicants come forward, please?
I'm representing Downstreet remotely, and I believe Chris
Hi.
from.
Yep, Chris and we've got
Got yours here?
Charles and Chris here.
Great,
They're
got
coming
the whole
up.
team.
Hey, Steven.
Thanks, Stephen.
Hey, fellas.
So this is a formal hearing and just wait for
Hold
that.
on one sec. We're just having asking some people to be quiet in the hallway.
So if everyone who is going to testify or has any interest in testifying, if you would raise your right hand now.
And this is everybody remotely too. Anybody who thinks they might speak on this application, you can go ahead and unmute yourselves to be sworn in. And if you can, turn on your camera. So we can see you raising your right hand.
So do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
I do.
Okay, great. Now we may proceed. So we did see we have, I think it was last but one meeting when we did the, sketch plan review for this, right?
Correct.
So let's just, if you wouldn't mind doing an overview of the project itself.
Sure.
Meredith, can you pull up a map?
Yep.
I find it a lot easier to
Yeah, let me
understand what you're talking
Appreciate
about.
it.
I can see a picture of it.
get there without making everybody nauseous.
Call.
That's probably the best one. That the one you want, Chris?
Yeah, that works well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Chris Austin here with Grenier Engineering. As Chair Allen said, we were in here for a sketch plan review of this project, only, a month or so ago, a couple meetings ago, pretty recent. I will say the project, has not changed from sketch plan review. The project consists of a 3-lot subdivision located at 9 Heaton Street. The parcel now is about 2.3 acres and contains the existing Washington County Mental Health Office building and large parking lots. And the proposed lots 2 and 3 are on the northern side of the parcel in a small wooded area of the existing parcel. Each proposed lot is about 8,200 square feet, 0.19 acres plus or minus. The project is located in the Res 3000 zoning district, so those lot minimums are easily met there. Each lot is proposed with a shared access point, 1 curb cut onto Heaton Street. It meets the building code widths of it 16 foot wide as proposed, with the associated, right away there shown on the screen. The project will be benefited by municipal water and sewer connections. We've worked with Public Works over time on that, and we now actually have a sewer route that does not involve any neighboring easements to be required. Each building zone on each new lot is shown on the plat here. They meet the minimum district setbacks to the front, side, and rear. And then they have developed building zone edges within the development that exceed setbacks, if anything. So the lots as proposed have been pretty well determined as developable here. This is flat land. There are no steep slopes. There are no wildlife habitats known, wetlands, or anything like that. It's intended for residential use. And the site layouts actually go further into how you would construct this project after the subdivision is approved. So there's quite a bit of detail here on parking, water, sewer, et cetera.
I did have a question just with the new information that came in. This is from the city.
Yeah.
And it seemed like I would just like clarity from someone. I'm not sure whether that's Meredith or you.
Sure.
That it seemed like it was pretty clear in the application that, that the city did not want to take over ownership of this water and sewer
The water and sewer
Wa-
lines on the private property.
on the private property. Yeah.
Correct. When we arranged the survey you see before you here, we were not yet confirmed with Public Works on how that would happen. And so we do have a labeled survey there that talks about how that easement for sewer there would be deeded to City of Montpelier. That will be changed per new information from DPW. They do not want to take over a service line on that private land.
So they'll do it at the street.
So they will take ownership of any line added to the street in the existing Heaton Street right away. So we are fully prepared to deliver a final Mylar that changes that note there to have that easement benefit lots 2 and 3, the private ownership of the, the sewer service that will get to the main and the street.
Okay. That was certainly my big question in there. Other board members, things you'd like to look at or talk about or ask? Rob?
This question for Meredith. Shared driveway. What did I miss it, or do we require like a driveway agreement also?
So if you look in the deed, the draft warranty deed, that is included in there. And I don't have my full book in front of me, but the staff report, I think it needs to be for a minimum of 20 years, the rights to, no, that's separate. That's the whole separate parking thing that's in here for you guys to review. But the shared parking agreement, it's one, it's an easement. And two, it's also then further referenced in the deed. So the agreement is the shared parking agreement. But we do say that if we're approving a joint driveway, we want an easement and it should be recorded. Otherwise it, doesn't necessarily, you don't have all the rights and responsibilities laid out. So they have the language in the warranty deed along with stuff about the shared parking.
Yeah, I guess I've seen it. We haven't done one of these in Montpelier really a long time.
There's
usually
different ways to
two
do
parts.
it.
There's like sort of the the nuts and bolts of it in the in the deed, and then the agreement is maybe more detailed, sort of like a condominium declaration or whatnot, which is not our role, I guess, at this point.
Right. And so the board, if I remember the language correctly, the board could ask to see that a draft of that condominium declaration information. It's not a required part of the application.
I think our draft deed speaks to the declaration
Yeah,
of condo actually in this case anyway.
Yeah, that there will be one.
Will be one.
Yeah.
That is
I
the
mean,
full intention. here.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Okay.
There will need to be something because they're gonna be sharing that driveway.
Yeah.
The basics of it are that each lot will be benefited to the outline of the gravel surfaces for ingress and egress.
Yep.
So it's not like a section of this piece of the driveway can only be used for this person or that person. They share it all in common, similar to a condo.
Seems better laid out than my own driveway. So
Now that's only a blow up. The whole way.
yeah, made in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'll take this.
And I did see that in there that they were going to convey that easement to the whatever group is the underlying ownership, joint ownership legal structure is.
Yep.
So, one other thing that we need to sort of find, as a matter of fact, in law, is the applicant has shown that the vacant parcels can be developed and without causing a disproportionate or unreasonable burden on the city, and then it fits the neighborhood already developed mixed neighborhood. And I think it does a nice job of that. Are there questions? Any more questions from the board? Because I want to open it to the public.
Yeah, I think go to the public.
Okay.
It hasn't changed very much from.
No, it really hasn't. It's very much the same thing.
Yeah, it's very consistent, other than fine tuning measurements for the draft survey. It's
And they
very in
even-
theme, it's
yeah.
very much this, exactly the same.
Okay, if somebody's interested in speaking, you could just hop right up to the microphone and identify yourself and your address. That'd be great.
I'm Emma Perry. We're the owners of 19 Heaton, which is just next door. We're just wondering the timeline, the starting of the project and the completion. We've been in touch with Downstreet.
Stephen, I think can speak to that best, but the timing is like yesterday, kind of. But Stephen, what do you have for a timeline update?
Yeah, I can share. I wish that I could share something really, really concrete. I can share something maybe a little less than concrete. We were shooting to have this done by the end of the year, mostly because of funding constraints. We've had some increased flexibility in some of that funding access. So we're hoping at this point to be able to do site work this year and hopefully build the homes next year and be complete by next summer.
Which is still a quick timeline.
Yeah.
Basically.
I guess one other, is there anybody else who wants to speak? Lisa?
Sure. Lisa Mahoney, 5 Main Street. So other side of you guys, I guess. So I had a question about the character of the neighborhood because this property was listed on Historic Resources Scoping Study as a potential National Register nomination. And I haven't seen anything with respect to historic evaluation in terms of character. And I don't know if that's been done or when in the process that would occur.
I guess my understanding is that would apply to a building. Am I not? I mean,
So I'm assuming you're talking about the really recent historic resources scoping study that was done by HPC. So under the zoning regulations, the historic aspect really comes into play typically when we're talking about specific buildings. And I think I'm just trying to think, the character of the neighborhood is typically tied specifically to the neighborhood description that we have for that Heaton neighborhood. I don't know where in here it is. And it's really, I don't remember if that's specific.
Historic and cultural and natural and all of that in that description, I think. Does it not?
Yeah, but it's not in my understanding, my interpretation is that that is not supposed to be stopping development. And because the way I would look at it, but it's up to the board, right? They make the decision, I don't vote. This isn't impacting any of the conserved property. It's not impacting the buildings, which are the parts that are described in that National Register listing. That removing this small piece of land wouldn't impact whether or not the existing buildings that are there could continue to be listed on the national or state registers. Because it's much more about those buildings, I think, in those places. It's not so much as like
there's not
a Redstone situation where you have the gardens, you have the, accessory stone walls and pathways and bridges that are part of that listing. That's just my speaking off the top of my head, having staffed Historic Preservation Commission and this for a while.
I guess so. Where exactly is the conservation? There is conserved land there.
There's
correct?
conserved land. Yep. So it's
Yeah.
on the staff report. sorry, my map's still on
That's
the
fine.
Gould Hill. So let me,
Yeah, the conserved land is across the street on a separate parcel.
And this doesn't affect that at all.
No. Other than being across the street from it, but no, I don't think it has any impact at all on conserved land.
let me. So I've got the conserved land, which is shaded there in solid green.
Oh.
The property, just give me a minute because I also want to bring up
That the-
current historic. Oh, not the district.
Well, that was one of my clarifying questions is, we're not, and to my knowledge, we are not in a historic district, correct?
So they are outside of the current Montpelier Historic District that's on the National Register. What Laura's bringing up is sorry, Lisa, I'm so sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry. Brain. So Montpelier's Historic Preservation Commission hired a consultant to do a new study to see what areas of the city could potentially become additional historic districts. None of that is actually officially rolled into any zoning. So there's no, the way Montpelier does its zoning is typically to the map. The character of the neighborhood aspect does get a little fuzzy. So this hasn't come up in like 7 years. I don't know how
I
that
think
would roll into your analysis.
I
honestly.
think the answer to that is that the board has not so far taken any of that new information from that and applied it, and I must say I sort of think Meredith is on the right track here, that I don't think that they're going to apply it to big lots of land versus, that don't have buildings on or historic structures or land or features or something, these are pretty straightforward lots.
Right, but the adjacent, I mean, the lot itself, 9 Heaton, which is the entire parcel, is what was included in the historic scoping study report. So the question is,
Did it scope
especially
in
with
or
the-
out?
well, I asked Meredith earlier today if we'd have an opportunity on design review. And apparently it doesn't go through design review, so I guess that's why I'm bringing it up now. Because we were, gonna wait until we saw sort of understanding the design piece of it, but if it doesn't go through design review,
Well,
I think this is our opportunity to sort of ask about the historic character and nature
Right.
of the development itself, not the vacant land.
Well,
so my experience or opinion would be that studies done are simply studies done and don't have any impact on the regulations or the subdivision before us here. I also can't think of what character impact would be had on the historic building by the subdivision located hundreds of feet away.
and then I think the other thing and this is a final subdivision hearing versus, we're not okaying any buildings or we're not at that step.
Okay,
Of saying,
that was my question. So what is that procedural stuff, I guess?
They will have to, come forward to develop it, correct?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so because it's not in the design review district,
Right.
because you're not talking about demolition of a historic structure to build any potential new structures on the new parcels to be created. As long as there's not some other aspect that triggers development review board approval, it would be just an administrative zoning permit in my office to get the zoning approval. And I just look to see if it meets the necessary provisions, mostly in chapter 300. And it goes through, the building permit process with our building inspector, and it gets checkoffs from the Department of Public Works for new driveway, new water and sewer service lines. There's no preemptive notice to neighbors. There's a 15-day appeal period for the zoning permit, and that starts when the permit gets issued. And then there's a notice put on the property that permit's been issued. Same for the building permit. And that's that standard process, as long as there's not either more development than 2 dwelling units, or some other trigger for DRB review. And for the potential development that has been shown in this application so far, I'm not seeing anything that would trigger DRB review or design review committee review. It's just not something that comes into play in the way that Montpelier has decided to regulate different parts of the city.
So this is it in terms of addressing historic character.
Well,
Yes.
yes.
That
Yeah,
was my-
this is, and it's
That's
not,
my-
and it's not the character of the future structures. It's just the character of how the parcel is being carved up.
Right,
That's
it's
what's at
just
issue.
relevant from historic. I do historic work in my professional
Like,
job as well, so it
Yeah.
is relevant in the sense that if that property was utilized historically as a hospital, which is part of the character of how it was developed, that's important too. It's not just the structure, it's the use of the property itself.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess from that perspective, we're concerned because this hasn't clearly been considered at all.
okay. Thank you.
Building is not a register, there's nothing to consider.
So can you tell me a little bit more about this historic study that was done, Meredith? What it is? It's a new one?
Yes, can you give me 1 second? Can I just take a note?
Sure.
Comment from one board member here is that I see, well, I think it's raising this question about there's a go to build a house there and there's a very historic, brick stone archway in the middle of this parcel. Obviously that's historic and like cannot be, taken down
Definitely.
without going through a process. As far as how this relates to character of the neighborhood, it's like, I guess I'm in the position that, the character of the neighborhood is very much a guide, but not really part of our sort of hard fast, regulation. Yeah, I mean, I guess I just raised the question. It's like, if there is something very particularly historic about the exact footprint of this subdivision, I think that would be helpful information to, add to the record. It was something specific.
Right. Lisa,
Yeah.
Can I ask you, have you become aware of anything that is specific to like the woods or is this,
I mean, I read the report.
Sorry, you have to come
Oh,
into the
sorry,
microphone so that
Sorry.
the recording.
everybody
catches
can
it.
hear you?
Yeah, sorry. I read the report, so I read the scoping study that she mentioned, and it identified 9 Heaton as potentially eligible for listing on the National Register, which does come into play when you develop through any federal or state funding. It usually goes to the State Historic Preservation Office. So I think there are other reviews that need to be done. I don't know enough about the property itself to know. I just know that there are times when the eligible criteria includes more than the structure itself.
Okay.
So I don't know if in this case it does. I
Okay.
don't know what the.
You don't know if it does or doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I
Thank
did
you.
not study the
Thank
property. but-
Say, look, from a design perspective as a board member, the proposed subdivisions are, it's on the other side of the parking lot from the historic structure. And largely impacting a woodland area. So I'd say from a design perspective, looking at this, assuming that future development would comply with zoning, so wouldn't be like a, 12-story tower over the historic building. It's,
Right.
it appears to be largely in character with the historic structure.
Okay, Brian?
Thanks. I just have a question back to Meredith about the study, not to quote anything from it specifically. I know you're looking into it right now, I think, but this is a question, but it's also kind of a response. I think that based on other projects that we've seen, it seems like if this historic study had been completed and that property had actually been added to the historic district, then at that point, the area of protected space, or, section 106, these types of things that the Historical Preservation Commission can enforce, they would become applicable. But since the property hasn't actually been added to that historic district, I would think that those aren't applicable at this time.
Okay.
But it's a question, really. Is that your understanding of that?
Yeah, so I've got a few different layers of questions that have been coming in as I've been sort
Okay.
of getting organized.
So let's just answer Brian's. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's layers to my answer to Brian's question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a step back. The historic resources scoping study was the very first step to potentially listing new structures, collections of structures, or neighborhoods on either the national or state registers as protected historic places, some grouping or sometimes just individual buildings. All this does is lay out potential future work for the Historic Preservation Commission to do, or hire somebody to do, to then go in and do detailed surveys of those groupings or neighborhoods.
Right. So we're not there.
We're nowhere near there for the
Okay.
actual zoning regulations. For Heaton specifically, 9 Heaton Street is identified in that scoping study as a location or building. There's very, very little detail about, the specifics for a potential individual listing. It just says Heaton Hospital.
So it's not a
So
neighborhood.
it's not a neighborhood necessarily. It's not necessarily a new neighborhood. It's listed by the parcel number because that's how we organize things in Montpelier and with the street address. There would need to be a detailed survey, information collected on that whole structure and what aspects of it would be protected, of the structure or structures or the area,
Right.
to then go through a nomination process to get it listed and protected. It's not a quick process. And it's it's not, if we were talking about one of the multitude, farms that they have that are listed, as a potential place in the study to research, I think they're talking about like protecting the open fields, things like that might come more into play as the character of the neighborhood. But it's, if you need me to, let me know if you want me to go back to the section 3507 specifically and look in more detail beyond what's in the staff report.
No,
for
I
what
don't-
that language
I don't
is.
think so. I mean, I think that's an interesting question. I think that, Brian's right, that it's not something that we can really actually adjudicate here from this position. We need to really go by what the zoning regulations are and whether there's some stop there for us. And I don't see one, with this project, especially if that is just in its scope phase. We haven't, there is nothing directing us to do that. So I guess that would be my feedback on that. I did have one further question. There was, I'm
Pete.
sorry. Who we got up here?
Pete.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I had 2 questions, real quick. One is maybe quicker. The first question, Meredith, you mentioned something about the review process, and as this is the development review board, and the approval here would be kind of driving the subsequent zoning permits, because there wouldn't be a necessary other design review. But I thought you also mentioned that if that was the case, that was for development to 1 to 2 dwellings, and this, of course, is 4 dwellings. So that was one of my questions. I was concerned about how does that play into, which I thought was in the Montpelier regs, that, it was up to a two
Okay.
dwelling development.
Let's let Meredith have at that part of the
Sure.
question so that we don't layer her with questions
Yeah,
again.
yeah, absolutely.
So Pete, I did say that really shortly and not maybe in detail. It's per parcel. So if there are more than 2 dwelling units being proposed on a parcel, then right under the current zoning regulations, site plan review applies. And if you're building new structures as part of those 3 or more dwelling units on a parcel, then it has to go to the development review board under our current regulations. Because the potential development, right? I still have to talk about potential because it's not actually applied for or anything. The potential development that's in this application right now is 2 dwelling units on each of the new vacant parcels. So neither of those would trigger coming to the development review board. Neither of them would trigger site plan under the regulations. So it would not come to the DRB.
Okay, so it's being cut up to avoid that process, right? So they'll have it cut.
I cannot speak to somebody's motives. I'm just
Okay.
telling you currently, as long as it's no more than 2 dwelling units per parcel, it's an administrative approval.
Was there a second part? Oh,
No, I think it's important to note that any administrative approval can be appealed to the DRB if the public is interested.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So Pete, there was a second part to your question, or
Yeah. And one of the other board members, and I apologize, I don't know his name, who's sitting to the far right of the board, mentioned about, reviewing the neighborhood, development and guide to, more of a guide than rules of evaluating the impact and to the nature of the neighborhood. And, in the informational meeting in April, I had submitted to Meredith a kind of just a quick evaluation of the immediate neighborhood. And, again, listing that, these are, mostly 2-story homes with, 10-foot cutout drives. And of course, and many of the homes, maybe not on the historic register, but potentially on a historic register. So I would just like, if you could walk me through how your evaluation is of the, proposed development fits into the neighborhood current design of the architecture and
Okay.
cutouts.
Let me respond to that a little bit to start with, and then I can give the applicant a chance as well. I think that when you're, I guess I wonder a little bit when you said impact, what you meant in terms of what impact it's going to have on the neighborhood. So there's some of those impacts are permissible and some of them are not permissible. You can do it on a socioeconomic impact of other people's property valuations, for example. That would be discriminatory. There's so there's a bunch of ways to look at that. The other thing, and I'm going to let the experts take over here in a minute, is that neighborhood, down even to the top part of Liberty there was primarily made up of like working class bungalows. So it was a part of an affordable housing plan for workers in the city of Montpelier, and anything that seems like it's going to be well done and has that in mind seems like it's pretty close chops with the neighborhood. Did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out in the staff report and in the zoning that one of the stated purposes of the Res 3000 district the property is in, which is part of the Heaton Street neighborhood, of course, is to encourage infill residential development with a range of housing choices, which I believe this project provides to the neighborhood in a very compact and
And I understand that
way.
Hang on.
but again, my question was what actual criteria you're using as a guide to determine how this development fits in the neighborhood. I understand, yeah, there might have been some homes that were built affordable in the past. I know our home was built in 1927 and, was a home to a senator and built. So again, like they're all different rows from down Liberty Street. And then of course the Heaton neighborhood through up towards College Street. There's a range of development, but again, it's the kind of the more of the eclectic neighborhood. And like I said, in the, just the evaluation map I drew up for Meredith in April, these are all, with the exception of one or two homes, they were, all 2-story homes. So not looking at any other impact except for the aesthetic impact of the neighborhood.
So our application spoke to the fact we're planning single family homes, partially to help affordability of the development. We are not here to review the architecture, nor are there any architectural standards involved to the subdivision, nor the development permits subsequent, to my knowledge.
There are not. Oh, Joe, go
I
ahead.
mean, this is just my own personal observation of the neighborhood, but the property you own, that's more or less a single story home, is it not? I mean, you have a garage below you, but just
It's a split level.
split
Yeah.
level. And then if you were to travel to, and that's the immediate adjacent property, and if you were to travel to the other end of Heaton Street, you could stand on the corner there, you can count 3, maybe 4 single story homes there. So I don't think that single story homes really factor in here when you're talking about the neighborhood. These are homes that are within, 1,500 feet of the property.
Right. Fairness.
So
And that's fine. I'm sorry. Can I
no,
just?
can I share my screen? I think this may
Sure.
help Pete. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm pulling up. Could you ask what the standards are? Specifically, these are the standards that I've just highlighted in blue, and I'm going to take it away because that actually might make it harder to read. There are only 3 standards under this character of the neighborhood and 3507. Be compatible with or extend the city's traditional settlement pattern as a compact urban center. Not contribute to a pattern of strip development. And be compatible with the character of the neighborhood. Those are the standards, right? And so what I then do in the staff report, and I'm not going to now scroll to this, but is we pull in the description of the neighborhood, which for the Heaton Street neighborhood, which is where this is located, talks about the old Heaton Hospital, the Heaton Woods Long-Term Care Facility, that the 2 parcels consist of larger structures and offer higher residential densities when compared to surrounding neighborhoods, just because they're much bigger parcels, and there's already big buildings on them. It talks about the protected open space, which I showed earlier, in that conserved land, and says that proposed developments should protect the conserved portions of the neighborhood, as well as minimize or mitigate impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. The board has not a whole lot of other direction other than that, and the purpose of the zoning district, which Chris Austin read out earlier. Those are the standards. So the board does its best within there, but it's all about how the land is being carved up, not about what the future development is. The future development comes into play with regard to whether or not the parcels can be developed within the zoning regulations and, complying with them. It's theoretical that the whole plan development will fall apart. Sorry, Stephen, I'm not counting on, not hoping for that, but that's possible. These parcels would still exist, and someone else might come forward with completely different proposals on how to develop these 2 new vacant parcels. The parcels would exist. All this approval is can those parcels exist and be developed in compliance with the regulations, and be carved up in compliance with this character of the neighborhood aspect.
No, I appreciate that, Meredith. And yeah, again, I was just thinking of the, the third criterion of, the character of the neighborhood. And that was my question, was that what is the board using as a guide? It was mentioned that, there is no real guide, but what, will that be documented, as the guide of determining the character of the neighborhood specifically for this proposal?
I think I guess I feel like when the zoning regulations say what they've said, and it's not a whole lot there, that we sort of act as a board collectively to think about what that neighborhood is like, what the long-term goals of the city are, what we try to apply our best selves to these projects. And I think that this project for me, at any rate, seems pretty dang appropriate to the neighborhood. It seems like it's gonna provide some much needed housing. It's gonna do so in a way that it sounds like it's gonna leave some of the woods on the lot, so it's gonna look nice. So you have now heard every regulation that guides what our opinion is on this from Meredith tonight. So there's not a lot there. It really is based on what the board feels like, and what the board thinks about and what the board is trying to work towards. I don't mean to jump off there, but I did want to check on the boundary. Were you guys the guys that talked about the fence and that? And can you come up to here and just? Oh, you can do it over here. That'd be fine. Yeah. So can you raise your right hand?
Oh, yeah, here we go.
And do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth on pains, penalties of perjury? I think I said that pretty fast. Okay.
Perfect. I'm Steve Perry.
Hi.
On 19th Street. So a couple questions. First, we could talk about the fence, which the negotiations with that is going well. We haven't finalized anything per se, but we've been back and forth with Steven. He's been really accommodating. We're about half and half split on the fence right now, figuring that out, which is great.
Great.
We did have a question based on what you had just spoken about with the trees. I had taken the project as pretty much clear cutting that entire lot. With very few trees left over. Am I misreading that?
I can't say that there will be no trees left. That is a good question. There's room to leave some trees along the edges in the setbacks, but yeah, a lot of the plan is going to involve cutting a
trees
small
down.
amount of trees down.
So I would like to just clarify real quickly. So like from our property line, it looked as if all of the trees on that edge is the reason for the fence, which would be because they're all going to be gone.
Well,
Is that true?
it's a 5-foot setback there, and to fit the structure, it'll be fairly close to the setback. So whether there are stumps able to be saved in that 5 feet or not, we can't speak to that at this moment.
Right, you might,
I would agree that's the purpose of the fence, is the fact that there's only a 5-foot buffer there. There will be limited trees.
and then that makes sense in a building way. I mean, I wouldn't want in 5 feet, between you and the property line to have a huge tree there. That makes sense that would have to be removed so that it doesn't affect the buildings.
Yeah,
Um,
so I wouldn't go as far as to say as we know it's clear cut, but
maybe not a lot of
don't
trees.
have a current plan to retain a ton of trees. There isn't a lot of space for that.
Thank you.
And I just had one final follow-up question about the parking. Is that for the development, like the next floor up? The parking is going directly toward from what I saw on the map, very much toward our home, and the way that it's located. And I'm guessing there's no chance of any sort of like at all of changing the aspect if the lights are going to shine very much on our property. But yeah.
So, of course, the fence won't help once it's set back a little bit.
I just wanted to clarify if that's something going forward, if it's a different committee to talk about that, or if that's
This is it for this.
for this
Yeah.
is it. We're done here.
Yeah, and unless you want to take it to court after this.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I don't think we have a lot of wiggle room to rearrange the development.
Okay.
Okay. Wait.
I guess I'm not exactly sure.
Okay,
what you
we
mean.
need to do this logistically here because it's gotten turned into you asked a question and your name for the record? Yeah.
Yeah.
sorry, before we move on from the parking, I'm up here.
Yeah.
I believe between, I don't know which numbers they are, but the ones adjacent, yep, to our property,
Mhm.
the parking is like a little bit set back.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So that it's not quite all the way, because I think if we're gonna have, thank you, if we're gonna have a fence between units 1 and 4,
Mhm.
no, that's the wrong side,
Very
4
cool.
and 3.
Yep.
See how the parking, there's like a big gap, and so the parking's like halfway back.
Mhm.
Just the fence, like there's a little incline up to our house, so the fence will no longer stop the headlights at all.
Right.
Unless they're pulled all the way to the front.
So, like the fence that you are negotiating, this is something that you can negotiate, but it's unlikely to be something that we are going to regulate based on the existing zoning.
Okay, that was what we just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify, that this isn't something that we have to.
Meredith?
I'm just gonna, I mean, this is something to deal with at the next stage of your guys' discussions, definitely. Just to throw it out there, and Chris, this will answer the question that they asked. Part of it is that every parcel has to retain a certain percentage of space that is a permeable surface where water can flow through.
Okay.
So, they are trying to preserve green space. So that I can,
Yeah,
I'm
so-
sharing it up here on the screen, right? So this area here that is between two building areas and between the potential future parking and the property line, right? This is your issue, why it's set back this far. That leaves green space for plantings, right? If there's trees there right now, that's like an area where maybe they can preserve some of the trees. So,
This,
if you start moving the parking all the way up to the fence, that's all pavement or gravel or something behind it. So that's anyway, I'm just sort of throwing that out there. But I mean, this would be the board would have to throw that in as one of, like, you guys would have to suddenly revisit that whole landscaping provision. If this is where, instead of like a fence on their property,
Right.
you could theoretically say you want them to try to preserve trees there, or they have to plant plantings there, something like that.
Okay.
But that's the only aspect of that
Right.
you guys could
Could
throw
address that
anything
all.
in on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Meredith, what you just said about the inclusion of some kind of vegetated buffer or something, were you saying that would be part of this application
Yes.
or
Yeah,
a future? Okay.
Because there is a landscaping consideration in the design of the subdivision that the board can make use of if they want to. Normally, that comes into play when you have lots of parcels and you're trying to maybe buffer that development from adjacent development, something like that. So that's when Isabel Circle, which was like 20 plus parcels, like maybe 30 plus
40,
parcels.
yeah.
There was a requirement that they ended up having to put in, that they were going to try and preserve, tree lines, buffering that from an adjacent
Yeah.
neighborhood, and stuff about preserving other areas of land as green space, stuff like that. But the board didn't at that point make recommendations or requirements for landscaping between the individually created parcels, because it was all going to depend on what was actually going on them.
Okay.
Right. And here, yes, there's a potential shown. You're not telling the applicants that they have to have this particular development.
Right. Can I follow that really quickly?
It's up to.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, real quick, because Alex has been waiting away too.
Alex, yeah. No, that was just an interesting segue for the thought that was floating, because Rob brought up the point that an administrative application could potentially be brought to the DRB, right? And I honestly, that wasn't on my radar. So is that true?
It can be appealed, right? If
Appeal.
somebody says I made the wrong decision,
Right.
It comes to us.
They would
they have,
to
and they
appeal it on
specify
grounds.
exactly, like they have to specify where I made a mistake.
Sure. I got it.
Then it can come to the board
Okay.
as an appeal, and you stand in the place in the zoning administrator's shoes and make a fresh decision.
Yeah.
But it's an appeal.
So in other words, it doesn't open up all the standards in your book that apply to other situations. You would only be reviewing an appeal in that scenario on the standards that Meredith reviews when she issues the administrative permit.
Yep.
Okay.
Alex?
Oh, sorry, that didn't get to my question actually, but that was a good introduction to it. So the only reason, the reason I'm asking this for clarification is because you have made the point several times that this is, and I agree with you, the approval of the subdivision of the property into these two lots. And we keep coming back to the point as a board and evaluating, well, we're not evaluating what could be built there or what would be built there, right? We're only evaluating the approvability of this subdivision. And I agree with all of that. However, there is, I think, a connection between how this is subdivided and then what will be built here. And that's clear because we've got an easement in the driveway, right? Which is, and this isn't good or bad. I'm just clarifying that there's a connection between the subdivision that is being approved in question tonight and how it will be developed, because we're seeing something that's concrete. It hasn't changed from last time, which is
It certainly
fine.
could be developed that way.
And there is an easement that runs directly on that property line to accommodate the proposed development. So whatever is approved today will be, as the gentleman pointed out, not appealable in whole, only in pieces.
Specifics where it has not been.
Right.
So
Well, there's
I'm sorry,
a
can I just,
couple of different things.
I want to make sure the public understands,
okay.
just real quick.
Yeah.
So a future zoning permit for development that I issued administratively would only be appealable on those factors that apply to that permit. I want to make sure the public understands that whatever the board decides on this subdivision application could be appealed. But the decision, if the decision happens tonight, because the way you just phrased that might make people think that
You
the
can't appeal
subdivision
this.
decision isn't appealable. The subdivision decision is appealable. It's appealable to environmental court. If anybody has questions about that, after the hearing closes and everything, you can reach out to me and I can give you those references. I just wanted to make sure that people understand that.
All right, Alex, give it a shot.
Comment, but it points to somewhat of a problem, and that is, I mean, the zoning regulations can stipulate buffers, planted buffers. They really can't be enforced. I know from personal experience.
That's not true.
Oh, they're
It's very,
difficult.
very, very hard
Right.
because
So it really depends on the good faith of the parties involved in private negotiations if they don't work out. And I just want to be clear about the neighborliness that's required. But it's also, or that whose absence can cause ill feeling. So the time you invest in a private solution is well worth it. And if it can be documented, so much the better. Because there is this sort of odd lacuna. I mean, we could theoretically, and I'm not advocating this, say that this subdivision was contingent upon not creating, a visual disturbance with my headlights, right? But that would be absurd, right? That's not a condition you can put on a subdivision.
I don't want to go down that path. I can just
No,
tell
I'm
you,
not
as
suggesting
the
you
chair,
do
I don't
it,
want to go down that
right?
path.
But I am recognizing that there is an issue here for which there's not a perfect remedy. That's all.
thank you, Alex.
Thanks. All right. Heard from a lot of people here. Other comments? Well,
I guess the,
got one more?
with two lots subdivisions, we have kicked the landscaping and screening plan down to the next process.
Right.
I don't know. That's 100% appropriate here, but we can discuss it because usually kicked it to the next process, which would be like a site plan, approval and not administrative approval. But I don't see maybe an issue with that.
So the times that we have said that we were not going to do it was when there was a single lot that was being divided into two lots. that were both developable.
Sure.
And we did not, we said that's, y'all figured out, we're not gonna go to that
Right.
level of, you know, micromanaging the neighborhoods, screening. This is a little bit bigger. It sounds like it's a little bit, different property. It also sounds like there's a decent process happening right now about defense and working things out. Yeah. Joe, comments? Nope. Nope. Other comments, other thoughts? All right. I would entertain a motion. You can make
No,
it.
no, 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 I know I can't make it. I just, because, there are a couple of conditions on here that aren't the normal subdivision, they're just the standard within 180 days, record the final survey plat. Just making sure that everybody's read through those draft conditions that I put in there. And that the applicant doesn't see any like typos or errors or things that don't make sense, that they don't understand. Just if somebody was just gonna read this, that's all. Because we haven't discussed those specific conditions. The board hasn't discussed them.
All right, let me just read those aloud so that we can all partake. Should the access and water and sewer easements be incorporated in the final plat and the warranty deed, the easements will be conveyed to the relevant parcel or building owners, not the city of Montpelier, and all references shall be corrected accordingly prior to recording. You guys are good with that, right?
We agree, yes.
Okay. Future development in compliance with the shared parking agreement approved by this decision does not require additional board review under section 3011. However, any expansion of the parking easement beyond that necessary for the two standard parking spaces shall require new board approval. So that does limit you. Okay, yeah.
Yep, good.
So that means that they basically can't make it bigger and better and brighter without having to come back here.
That's our understanding.
I just know the board hadn't actually discussed that section. of
Right.
the Parking agreement a whole lot, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just being read as written.
If everybody's good.
I'm
'cause
sorry?
that's-
These are being read as written.
I don't have a problem with either one of those. I think that the city's made it super clear that they don't want the easement, so I think that's important to include. I also think the shared parking agreement should be incorporated as it's been presented this evening.
Yeah, that's not something we've done before that I've, suggested the board do before, but because it's all laid out and it would be part of the deed and there's easements on the plat for the parking, it seemed like working that limited shared parking agreement into the subdivision approval made sense. I mean, if a future application for development doesn't include shared parking because it ends up being just one house per parcel, or somebody buys both and just puts 2 units on it, you don't need a shared parking agreement. It's fine. It doesn't have to come back to the board.
So just the
but if-
expansion of the
Right,
shared parking.
but if somebody decided to have more shared parking than what is shown on this, plat for the shared parking agreement, that's going to be part of an easement. If there was a bigger area that can be that parking easement, then it would have to come back to the board because it's off-site parking under that section 3011. Sorry, that was a lot of roundabout.
Yeah, so I
So,
think
make
it
sure
should
you-
be, I think it should be included. I think that's all we need to say there. All right. That'd be great. Go for it.
Motion to approve a 3-parcel subdivision of 9 Heaton Street, including the proposed shared parking agreement between parcels 2 and 3 as presented in application Z 2025-0036 and supporting and supplemental materials subject to the following conditions of approval. 1. Should the access and water and sewer easements be incorporated into the final plat and warranty deed, the easements will be conveyed to the relevant parcel or building owners, not the city of Montpelier, and all references shall be corrected accordingly prior to recording. 2. Within 180 days of this decision, applicants shall record the corrected final survey plat to the Montpelier
Land Records Office per the procedures detailed in section 4405 of the zoning regulations, including the locations of all applicable survey rods and markers. 3. Future development in compliance with the shared parking agreement approved by this decision does not require additional board review under section 3011.e. However, any expansion of the parking easement beyond that necessary for 2 standard parking spaces shall require new board approvals.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I don't know. I kind of almost want to amend another condition just to cover our bases. Landscaping and screening, just to say that the plan will be a landscaping screening plan will be included with future development applications. Whether it's,
You want to say what?
Even if it's not, even if it doesn't trigger site plan, you want a landscaping and
I
screening
think so.
proposal.
And here I can, well, that's my amendment. I can talk about maybe the reasons why in a second, or I can talk about it first. What would you prefer to?
First.
Okay, the reason why is that I think it asked the question is that you have this parcel, you're potentially going to build 3 houses there. I don't know what you're going to do. There's the potential for without clearly identifying like who's going to make the decisions of what trees are cut. Is the first excavator that shows up on site going to decide what trees are going to get cut, or is downstreet going to decide methodically through a plan what trees are going to get cut? And I would just hate for a situation to happen where someone shows up on site and cuts every single tree, and there not to be just some type of conversation, and thought put into it as to where the houses are going to go. How you don't know, you can't spell out on a site plan at this time like which ones there are, but like very close to the process, you can. And maybe that landscaping screening plan says that we're going to cut every single tree on the site because there's no way around it. That's fine. But I just want to make sure that when that
There's an
the
opportunity
future
to be
applications come in, we're just memorializing the process that's really already underway.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Under what review standards would that plan be approved under? Because Meredith,
That's
that's
where
a
it
ZA I do appreciate your attempt at this condition. I'm not even really arguing it, but where my head goes is then, okay, you're made to hand in a plan, but she has no standards to review that under.
So the only.
So it's
standard-
just a file plan, which is fine, but.
So
Yeah, that was also gonna be my question is they could come up with whatever. You get out there with an excavator and a couple of contractors and the plan could change. I mean, not everything always works out the way you hope it will. So would there even be any repercussions for, let's say you wanted to save 2 of these trees on this landscaping plan and the contractor gets out here and says, my machine's too big, I can't make that happen. They're coming down, they come down, what happens then? Anything?
So I appreciate the fact that a screening bush would be nice. I totally get that. It does seem like the applicant is working with people in the neighborhood to talk about what would be appropriate. And the only, thing that I could see us using is the full boat on the landscape plan, which would be horrendous to my mind. That's a long and involved, for 2 lot subdivision, I just think that's a lot to ask somebody, but that's me. That's what I think.
Sharon, quick
Brian?
question about following up on the applicant's question, which is, are there landscaping and buffering requirements that could be referenced? Meredith, that was the answer that I was thinking might come out of that.
Yeah, so section 3203 of the site plan standards is where the landscaping and screening is. There are, if the entire, so normally for a site plan projects that are anything other than single or 2 family homes, or 1 or 2 dwelling units on a parcel, potentially that entire section applies. So, and even if you don't have some of the higher provisions about like having to have so much parking per, so much landscaping per, area of parking, if those don't apply, you still have a total site landscaping, which requires so many trees or bushes per square feet of impervious surface, right?
Not necessarily
and
to
what-
be maintained, but to be present at the time of development.
No. That has to be either retained, planted, and or maintained for in perpetuity.
Right. Sorry, that's all I
So,
was trying to clarify
right,
was
so
saved versus replanted. That was-
no, there's you want to try and save stuff. If you can't save it, you then have to plant new trees or shrubs of various sizes that equal so many square feet of planted area. It's very, very, very specific. And Planning Commission and City Council opted to say this entire section is too onerous for people who are trying to build just single or two family homes or one or two homes on a parcel. I think that if the board really, really wanted to go here, then what I think they would need to zero in on is specifically section 3203.I, which is specifically about screening. And you could dig down in there if you wanted to. But it's specific to like parking lots, very specific things that should be screened.
I'm good. I'm glad that we had this extra discussion because I think everyone involved is put on notice about, the importance of continuing the process that's already underway. I'll make a motion to approve the motion as presented by Joe. No
I think we
amendment.
just vote on it.
Yeah, just vote on it. So you're not proposing
yeah,
an
yeah.
amendment.
But you
Okay.
never did.
We
So.
withdraw your
Maybe I'll call the vote here.
No amendment. We're voting.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes.
I vote yes.
Yes.
I vote no.
Yes.
Okay. Great, your project is approved.
5-1, right?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. We really.
Thank you all.
So official decision doesn't happen until the written decision comes out. We'll move forward on that as soon as possible. There's no pre-permit conditions. So as soon as the written decision has been signed by the chair, then the zoning permit will get issued too. So your appeal periods will run concurrently.
Great.
So feel free to start moving on tweaking the final plat.
Thank you very much.
Getting your wording right.
We will do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Could I make a motion for a bathroom break before we finish up the meeting?
Yeah, you don't have to make a motion. You just have one, okay? If you need to put on your helmet though.
I wondered about that. But I wanted
Safety first.
But he saw I had my eye on that helmet.
That's a dangerous neighborhood.
No, you can, if you don't want it, just put it on a table, and I'll recycle it. Thank you.
Haven't had a unanimous in a while.
And what?
So that's me a non-unanimous.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I voted no on a couple of it back in the day.
Clear first here.
So this is all
Oh.
still recording.
Yeah.
Everything's being broadcast.
This is in
A
public.
reminder. So.
Board members in next meeting.
Minutes and then a bunch of
There's a bunch of
significant other business.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're losing members. We losing you, Rob?
Oh, city council has to let me
The-
back off.
You don't have to worry about that.
They better let me.
My vacancy under your name.
Well,
Well,
because we
I
just want
asked for
people to
that.
apply. Because his term is expiring, we're just trying to have that apply
You know,
in as many places as
It was
possible.
sort of interesting. I didn't see any other announcements about the vacancy. I mean, I applied because I saw an announcement somewhere
Oh,
about
yeah.
vacancy.
So
And I subscribed to,
Just the one,
there have been, I think
This is something that might be useful for Brian to hear.
I don't know.
Okay.
This is just about vacancies on the,
Okay.
yeah, this is just vacancies on the board. There's been a lot of administrative shakeup and readjusting of things. So some of those announcements maybe haven't been going out as promptly as they need to be. But yes, there will be additional announcements. I think that one, I thought that one got reactivated on the vacancy website, but maybe it didn't.
Oh, you mean on the city website?
Yeah, the city website.
I can't remember whether I looked.
Yeah, I mean, that's a reminder that the city's communications director got shifted over to then become most of the administrative support for the entire city manager's office. So she's
a really easy time,
right, which so there's that. So we're actually pulling in staff members from other departments to take on and double team all sorts of things, including, our office basically taking over all the administrative stuff for all the committees that the planning department staffs, while also being down a staff member ourselves. So, but I hear you. Yes, but Rob's got his application in.
Yeah.
So, he's I think the city council, it's gonna be on the city council agenda June 11th to at least get Rob reappointed. So we'll get back to that in a minute after we do when
Meredith, if we're still in informal mode, just, this is obviously not the time for it with this level of communications capacity stretch at the city, but it would be amazing if there was like one place on the site that was, is there one place that has all the committees and where there are openings? Because
yes, there's a committee vacancies page that is supposed to, but it has to be refreshed
Yeah,
periodically.
city
Things kind of
website.
time out.
Yeah, the city website is hard to
Yep,
navigate.
yep, well, and that's after it was rejiggered. So so for everybody listening, if you go to the City of Montpelier website and at the top tabs, hover over boards and commissions, there is a, where is it? Committee vacancies, right underneath agendas and minutes. There's a committee vacancies option that's before the list of committees, and you click on that and you should see. And right, they time out. They're also reevaluating. If you sign up for the city manager's weekly report, it's been mentioned multiple times in there that the entire committee structure of the city's entire committee structure is being reevaluated by a subcommittee of city council with staff. So,
Just the review board.
that's the only one that's listed on there right now.
Yeah.
In part, like I was just saying, the entire committee structure is being reevaluated and may be changed. There may be mergers of committees and other things. So
Don't be so lucky. I don't think that's gonna happen.
yeah.
So
We won't get rid of it. No, this is not
Wanna
leaving
do-
because we're statutorily required.
do you want to do a quick update on potential zoning amendment?
Do you want to do that before the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes from 4/21.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Next update from the staff. Thank you, Rob and company for such a speedy approval.
Okay, so I just want the board to be aware that the planning commission is considering interim zoning updates. So interim ones are basically emergency zoning updates that do not have to go through the full multi-public hearing process to go into an effect. Planning commission is going to be considering red line changes on next Monday, so in a week, including creating administrative subdivision approvals, as well as increasing the number of units. It says separately, so administrative subdivision could happen for parcels of maybe 2 subdivisions, 3 subdivision parcels, sorry, brain. As long as they didn't have complications to them. There's also a push to have major site plan only apply if there are more than 6 dwelling units being proposed or commercial development. Those are the really biggies that would reduce even further what's coming to the board. So feel free to attend the planning commission meeting on Monday, either remotely or in person if you want. To get those through, planning commission has to recommend them to city council, and then the city council only has to have one public hearing on them and then can approve them. They then have to be revisited and approved through the full multi-hearing public hearing process, planning commission and DRB, within 2 years to be fully adopted. So that is the quick changes. And then, but they're also looking at a whole slew of other potential changes to try and increase residential development in Montpelier. And though there will be a longer, like probably year-long discussion of those additional potential tweaks, but the quick ones that might change is there might be a more administrative subdivision and site plan approvals.
That is the intention. They may want to clarify character of the neighborhoods.
Well, right, yeah, so some of the, basically what they would do is they would, the proposal is to create minor subdivisions, which may be approved administratively, and major subdivisions. Just like right now, there's minor site plan and major site plan, and substandards only apply to major site plan right now. Some of the subdivision standards would only apply to major subdivisions. And so one of those is probably the character of the neighborhood. If it was a
Only for
minor subdivision where it's only creating a limited number of new parcels, and there's all these other factors that are complications don't apply, then it would be a minor subdivision approval. Character, the neighborhood wouldn't even be considered, I don't think. And there's some others because they're more subjective standards. They would not apply to those minor subdivisions. Because it's not something a single person should be judging. Because it's
Aside from the abstract, we need more housing rationale. What's pushing this?
I don't think that's abstract though.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
I mean, this is
abstract, and I'm all for infill.
there's been a lot of.
But I've also seen a lot of pushy developers in my life.
Yep. So I mean, feel free to, I don't. The planning commission asked for recommendations, both from staff and from people who've been attending planning commission meetings on what could change to increase residential development. So there were a slew of recommendations, and some of them were zeroed in on as fairly straightforward changes that could be made in the short term versus things that need a lot more discussion to even be able to come up with something rational as a way to change the zoning regulations. That's what I've got for you on that. Feel free to sign up to get planning commission agendas when they get posted and attend meetings. You're the DRB, but you're also residents in Montpelier, so you're free to provide your comments as well. To planning commission and city council. Doesn't hurt to know when those agendas come up and what's on them.
So our next meeting is going to be June 16th. That's there. And then we have 3 terms expiring on June 8th. Oh, what?
So it says June 6th. Well, it said June 2nd. It's supposed to say June 16th. I don't have any applications for the 16th. So our next meeting actually isn't until July, because you guys didn't post, you guys made a decision. Unless you guys want to meet administratively, the next meeting is July 7th.
Oh, and Meredith, I'm on vacation then. I should send you an email, but.
Yep, I'll note it down, but do also send me an email. So you will not be available July 7th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vacation is no excuse.
So I just want to say,
I'll be sure to be somewhere with no.
I'm not renewing.
might be.
I'm leaving. So I won't be here after this meeting. This is my last meeting. Because life has gotten a little too much and a little too busy. I really like it, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. I love planning regulations. I really like reading them. I think it's all good. We have to be proactive about housing. if we start getting in the way of a lot of housing, then shame on us, you know? I mean, we are so desperate for it here. And I don't mean like let somebody throw some poor quality anything, you know? But we have a lot of really good contractors and a lot of people with good ideas, and I would just like to see us be very, very pro housing. I'm gonna leave that as my last thought.
Are we gonna, are we gonna see you,
Showing up at
see you
meetings?
up, showing
Oh,
up at
I
meetings?
doubt it. I doubt it very much. Something really cracks a thing off. I'll give those guys an email.
So when it comes to membership, please try and think of anybody who might be interested to send my way, or just point them to send them my way if you're not sure where to send them to get an application. Rob has applied to get reappointed. Gene is also, his term's also expiring June 8th. He said he's gonna apply. That application hasn't come in. So if he doesn't apply, we're gonna have 3 vacancies as of June 8th. So that, brings us down to 6 total members. And the what's needed for a quorum does not change if you just have vacancies. So we always need at least 4 for a quorum. The other thing is at the next meeting on July 7th, we'll need to do a new vote for officer, at least for chair. If somebody moves from vice chair to chair, then we'll have to have elections, nominations, elections for
Will they
both.
be permanent or only until August?
It goes until the standard.
The standard is August.
Yeah, the standard, which is, sorry, it's not the same on all 3 of my committees. It changes. Yeah, it would be until August, in which time the annual re-election of chair and vice chair will happen again.
Could look maybe to see if we could do it with one stop, but it's easy enough to just.
Huh?
We could look to see exactly when the term ends and what based on the meeting schedule.
See if you could do it in one,
If we do it in one, I don't know.
because we don't meet till July
'Cause it's like-
7th. We're pretty close to the August 1st one.
You could probably make a special motion that says
This is good for the next 3 years.
Yeah, not for the next 3 years, but you
looked
could.
at it. I looked at it. There is a provision for an acting vice chair. I mean, I skimmed it, so.
Oh.
Don't quote, but there's a provision for an acting vice chair in the event that the vice chair has to recuse himself.
Yeah.
So presumably it would be fairly easy to have the acting vice chair.
To do a nominate per meeting, acting vice chair, with the vice chair taking over the chair's roles until you get to August. Now I see what you're getting
Yeah.
at. Thank you, Alex. Yes, that could totally happen. People just need to discuss and figure out yeah. No, I think that's a good solution, especially with Catherine being absent July 7th. I think that makes a ton of sense. We don't have a meeting the first meeting of August because I'm on vacation. So I think that makes a ton of sense, Alex. Thank you very much.
You better show Rob.
Hmm?
That means you better show Rob.
Yeah, I'll be gone. First to the 3rd, so.
Yeah, you'll be gone on the 21st. I do have an application for the 7th, so we will have a meeting then. It'll be, I have at least one so far. The Veo Road subdivision will be coming back.
Which road?
So Veo Road, so it's the one way up off of Elm Street on the left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike spot.
Wherever we can get.
Yeah. So, okay. I
Motion
think
to adjourn?
that's everything.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Very much.
Sharon.
Sharon. I'm gonna miss it.